As someone who grew up with outsider media shaping my hobbies and interests as a child, it's only natural that in adulthood I want to grow along with my hobbies and both teach and grow the hobby as well. With the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game being one of the main communities and hobbies that get heavily misunderstood and mistreated by those unfamiliar with it.
You know, when you put your all into something, it's kind of a bummer when people don't seem to care. Kind of makes you feel like the sport you love is becoming a joke.
Ignorance is not a virtue. It's not cool to not know what you're talking about. That's just not knowing what you're talking about.
For as much as I'd like to talk about the TCG with the vast array of people, community leaders, and even stories the game and history share, I want to make a more broader first video to better understand me and my style of making content. As much fun as it would be to talk about clickbait content, lowest common denominator videos, or content creators who just make the game look bad, I'd rather do something positive and hopefully teach something new along the way. With how big of a franchise Yu-Gi-Oh is, many people are mostly familiar with the anime, since it was the first thing to be localized. The anime had a very slight delay due to the real-world events during its original scheduling, with many real-world events shaping most media in the Western world, mainly the United States, as well as the card game not releasing until 2002, 6 months later, something that also had a slight change, for the best long-term in my opinion. With the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, it's easy to teach the uninitiated and unfamiliar with a lot of helpful resources to get into the game physically or through its diverse different formats. The main thing that's hard to understand is the anime, since to us Westerners, the anime came out first. This is made even more confusing when the comic goes into more detail on the rules compared to the English dub, yet the comic never got a release until 2005 when the original era came to a close. For those unfamiliar, there's a few videos similar to what I'm going to go over. Steve made an analysis and retrospective akin to CinemaSin style critiquing, but he is right in a few perspectives as a TCG player. Literally Who made a video, though a bit cynical through modern hindsight of what the cards do now in 2024, while Janjo Zone made the best understanding of today's subject while never talking about the show. On a TCG point of view, many players saw Duelist Kingdom rules as cheating or playing the game incorrectly, when they were actually playing the game properly, as the game was first envisioned to function. If you ever played Dark Duel Stories, which was the third entry on the Duel Monster series, or Forbidden Memories, they're very similar to how the game originally was played. We never got the extra rules or advanced rules until Duel Monsters 5, released on Game Boy Advance. Alright, I'm going to speed through the rules real quick. Levels were just a rarity feature for monsters, so you can normal summon anything once per turn. You can set or activate one spell or trap card per turn, with some loose exceptions that do have a modern day impact in some rulings even today. Also, set and trap cards are triggered since Magic and trap cards didn't have card types. This is why they play cards as quick plays or cards as on their opponent's turn when they otherwise shouldn't, with accessory cards remaining in play, which we now know as quick cards. Where the infamous mistranslation of "you activated my magic card," or more famously, "you triggered my trap card" comes from. Since you never activate cards, it simply triggers or resolves them. Now we can go over basic rules of Duelist Kingdom. The important thing to keep in mind is nothing about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game has been finalized at this time, since the comic was commercial to the game at this point, so card game rules are a bit loose. Most important thing to note is that early Yu-Gi-Oh! Takes a huge inspiration from Magic the Gathering, which will later be apparent as well as its Dungeons & Dragons inspiration for some of the early rules. Aside from 2,000 life points and attacking during Wave not existing, there are some major rules and minor rules to help illustrate and understand. Rule number 1. If a monster was in a matching field, they got a 30% boost to attack and defense. Additionally, there's a priority system to the battle phase, where a monster with a field power bonus had priority over the monster that doesn't have one. This only really comes up in the early duels, but it's something to keep in mind. This is explained with the entire island representing the dueling arenas, with 5 of the 6 original field spells being equivalent to basic land types in Magic. Grasslands are plains, oceans are islands, wastelands are swamps, mountains are mountains, and forests are forests. Rule number 2. You have to play a monster attack once per turn. If you can't, you lose the duel. This is to compensate for the inability to attack directly. This rule only comes up 5 times among 3 different duelists, where some players flat out lose because they can't play any monsters or their hands or decks don't have any more monsters to play. This also creates a metagame of stalling or turtling, which does foreshadow who will be good in the ranking, or what certain players are known for. Rule number 3. Monsters have a type, attribute, and alignment matchup, which only really comes up in duels involving Joey for some reason. While discussing alignments, I do want to explain Rituals of Fusion, since it's a commonly heavily misunderstood topic that only really people who played Forbidden Memories or Dark Duel Stories really understand. Rule number 4. As it turns out, fusion monsters are very complicated, so I'm just going to say it's very simple and it's just that you just stack monsters together and perform a fusion summon, without getting into the full detail of it. As for rituals, all you really need is a ritual spell, the proper ritual material, and enough monsters to equal that level of the monster ritual spell. Rule number 5. Players can only have 40 card decks. Rule number 6. If a monster is destroyed by card effect while in attack mode, a portion of their attack points are deducted from your life points. This comes up frequently and confuses a lot of people, mostly regarding Mirror Force. Mirror Force works as if the attacking monster crashed into itself and attacked all other monsters, so damage calculation is applied as normal. Likewise, if a trap card destroys a monster, that they lose life points if it was an attack mode or a monster effect like Time Waster. Rule number 7, players always draw back up to 5 cards. This is why players always have a full grip. This is also why some players don't draw for turn or spend their turn attacking or turtling. On paper this should stop some strategies, but as a minor foreshadowing, this does not stop the inevitable. I'm also going to quickly go over the last 4 rules because they're kind of complicated and they're a little hard to conceptualize or visualize, so they're all on screen for you to read. I do want to go over some design aspects that I absolutely love about Yu-Gi-Oh! For instance, Yugi's deck is based around strategy and his monster lineup are based around classic classes in a role-playing game: Wizard, Warrior, Knight, Ranger, and Cleric. Joey's monsters are based off generic enemies and wild enemy encounters. Kaiba's gimmick is based around traps, debuffs, and his long lineup of boss monsters. With that, I should explain the ranking criteria. I'll be going in order of their final appearances, meaning Weevil will be the first and Yugi and Pegasus will be the last, since their final duel happened at the end of the story arc. Out of the 22 characters, I'll be ranking their strategy, deck, game plan, and cards. I'll go over their best duel and performance if they've had more than one duel. Relevant factors like hard the cards and the power friendship will not apply. The story, the feels, the animation, and the characters will not have an impact on the ranking. So if you wanted to see me talk about emotional stakes or story arcs, that kind of stuff will not be present. Also, I won't be using clips as often, or music, because I want to be a good boy on YouTube. Also, don't worry about music, I have you guys covered. With that, I hope you guys enjoy. The Japanese champion Weevil. Insects, especially vanilla insects, are fairly weak. The game plan is simple. We're going to play a monster and equip one of the many good equip cards to it, with Laser Arm Cannon giving 1500 attack. With the old rules in tandem with Duelist Kingdom rules, Weevil is actually a menacing duelist. With 30% boost to attack, equipping his monsters, which was soft at the time, his monsters can easily attack over anything, with basic insect getting to 2600 attack. He may not have any skill, but planning on luring people to the forest where only insects, beasts, beast warriors, and plants get the bonus is pretty genius. Also, Yugi not having object permanence and the infamous Horn of the Unicorn doing nothing is a staple in Duelist Kingdom. Great Moth and even the cleverly hinted at perfectly ultimate Great Moth are very strong monsters in the video games and worked a bit different. Rex and Weevil get the Duelist Kingdom rules in advance before anyone else for getting first and second in the Japanese nationals. In the English version they changed it so he stole the rules for some reason. Second, he also cleverly hints at perfectly ultimate Great Moth, with many players believe that he lied, even though perfectly ultimate Great Moth does require 6 turns while Great Moth only requires 4 turns, so he's playing correctly even though Yugi did beat the Cocoon of Evolution. Also, the Poison Pollen is fairly accurate, it's a real thing. He also attacks both Gaia and Beaver Warrior simultaneously due to their inability to fly. With the strategy of equipping and the backup ace of Great Moth, this is a very potent game plan. Only weakness sometimes being raw attack stat when not doing the forest. He also has some trap card that many believe to be Widespread Ruin, a great start to our ace. If you see any new additions to the tier list, this isn't a mistake. Out of the 22 duelists, some are just so good they deserve higher ratings. You know who they are if you followed along with the rules. Mako. Yes, his name is pronounced Mako since it's the name of an endangered shark. So once again we have a duelist who uses a method to lure opponents to their duel arenas and use the field to their advantage. As a minor history lesson, Umi lowers Pyro and Machine monsters due to them being the last monster types implemented into the game, with the Fire attribute being the final attribute being added to the game. Using Stealth and Power to overwhelm his opponent is an effective game plan, with the help of Yugi failing the object permanent test for the second time, as well as Horn of the Unicorn back-to-back doing nothing and failing Yugi, which isn't as bogus as it sounds. This is also technically the third time the inability to play a monster resulting in a game loss comes up in Duelist Kingdom, which is relevant due to Kai Ryushin's attack almost removing all of Yugi's health. Yes, the moon does impact the tides, which is why Yugi's field is almost completely submerged. Unfortunately, Mako gets OTK'd by Yugi's flying monster by burning the Umi field, attacking for lethal. Mako is by far the nicest and honest duelist, respectfully taking his loss. It's no wonder why he got top 4 at Nationals. His sea stealth and decent power for his monsters is a big factor. Even with only seeing 4 cards in his deck, he's demonstrated enough and shown he can be a real threat. One last thing is that Yugi does play a water monster. It's in the form of Great White, something that only sees play in Pegasus in the comic. Once again, a very solid A tier with luring duelists with food. As strange as it is, Mokuba does have an on-screen duel unlike most other characters. However, he uses a stolen deck. I also noticed that Man-Eating Plant and Man-Eater are the same card but completely different art. In the video games and Duel Links, Mokuba does use Thunder Dragons, and coincidentally, Thunder Dragon Colossus has recently come off the ban list. I would make a Thunder Dragon Colossus joke, but every real TCG player knows that card is underwhelming. Mokuba is the stand-in for every other duelist without a name. A solid D tier. Rex Raptor, aka Dinosaur Ryuzaki, aka Dinosaur, which is why his beanie says DR on it, since those are his initials. Much like Weevil, I'm not going to count his national match loss or his loss to Mai, since both those happen on screen. You know the rules. Rex's sole gimmick is to make a big dino and attack. Dinosaurs haven't changed that much from modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Sadly, Joey does fail another object permanence test, nearly forgetting the field power bonus for the second time in a row. Luckily for the second time in a row, alignments matter and Joey uses fire to defeat Dinosaur. Depending on if you watch the show or comic, Rex has Serpent Night Dragon from coming second at Nationals or just immediately slams down Red Eyes in the comic. Now the funny thing is in the anime, Rex suffers from object permanence, forgetting that Swamp Battle Guard actually is stronger than his dragon before the Lava Battle Guard boost, just barely by 55 attack points. Serpent Night Dragon does beat over Flame Swordsman just by 10 attack points as well. Red Eyes destroys both Swamp Battle Guard and Lava Battle Guard simultaneously because it's a flying monster and Dragon Nails boosts its attack for cooldown. After an awkward stalemate with Rex on the verge of winning, suffers from object permanence, along with Joey and forget Time Wizard is in play, resulting in Joey winning 2 more star chips and the iconic Red Eyes Black Dragon, with Joey using Time Wizard's ability for the first time, which I'll get into in further detail. How did Rex lose? Rex's main gimmick is high attack, and sometimes that's all you need in early Yu-Gi-Oh! His only magic card he played is Dragon Nails that he used to make Red Eyes as strong as Blue Eyes, which isn't bad. Another solid A tier with high stats. 3 for 3 on A tier Duelist. Let's hope they keep this up. Panic with a K, because his name was Player Killer number 2, which is why his jacket has a P and a K on it. There's not much to talk about here. This duel ends really fast. This is without a doubt the worst Yugi duel. There's turtling on both sides, and Panic's main gimmick is going defense mode, with the supposed pyro and dark mechanic sounding cool, but is quickly forgotten about. The best detail of this duel is that Castle of Dark Illusions is the second time the card is played to act as the environment. If you want to know how bad this duel is, here are the stats of Panic's monsters. Defense mode, pass. This is not a good strategy when this is the end goal. It's baffling how Mai lost. Luckily it was off screen and doesn't count. Also, if you do the math, Panic lost 3,300 life points from the collapse of the castle thanks to Yellow Luster Shield. This is a laughably bad deck and the worst of Pegasus' hired player killers. C tier. As a side note, if Yugi ever drew Dark Magician, this duel would have ended immediately. The same goes for his duel against Mako, but I just wanted to point that out. Plus, Dark Magician can actually get a field power bonus while in the dark. If you haven't guessed it, Joey's duels are very short and not much goes on, since it's a reoccurring joke that duels in Yu-Gi-Oh! Cut away from the whole point of the series. Bonz is not a menacing duelist. Even if he played Snake here with his field power bonuses, that would only be 1950, which is laughably bad for the peak of his offenses. If not for Keith giving him Call the Haunted, Joey would have won this by a landslide. This is another solo Joey duel, and while a good Joey duel, it's a very bad Bonz duel. Call the Haunted in tandem with Wasteland makes them stronger, and they get stronger when they're destroyed by battle. The main thing Joey's good for. Nothing bails Joey out. Flame Swordsman fails him. Time Wizard for the first and only time fails. As a side note, Time Wizard's last bit of relevance in the series was in the last duel against Rex. Time Wizard peaks early, and never does anything else now. Something Yu-Gi-Oh! Fans tend to forget and just over-exaggerate Joey's reliance on luck, but there's actually another player who relies on luck more than Joey in the story arc, with Pumpkin boosting Bonz' zombies, and Joey staring down a stop defense trap card. He goes for the offense and tricks the audience.
Go! Red Eyes Black Dragon!
This is the first real duel Joey uses Red Eyes in, and it's easily defeated. When all hope seems lost, even his strongest monster was defeated, which leads to a more iconic moment of Joey playing his very first magic card, the Shield and Sword. Bonz' deck is very underwhelming. Pumpkin is a good card for zombies, but isn't good without a board. If Joey ever got a field power bonus, this duel would have been heavily one-sided. Call the Haunted and coaching from a champion duelist is what's carrying Bonz, our first B tier. I debated on counting this duel, since it's a staple in Yu-Gi-Oh! That every tag duel in the series is boring and tedious to watch. While true, this is the rare time where after reading Takahashi's editorial notes, I fell in love with this duel. The weirder the concept of duels get, the better Takahashi gets to shine. I'm glad I watched it because so much is done right and so fast. The Labyrinth isn't hard to understand since levels equate to mass. This is also where Labyrinth Brawl is used as an environmental card. The brothers counter this with Wall Shadow so it can move freely within the maze, which is swiftly countered by Joey and the first trap card he ever plays in the series, Kunai with Chain. Seeing this iconic scene sells the idea of the design philosophy on Joey and Yugi's deck come into play on the role-playing game aspect. Joey has the equipment and generic NPC aesthetic, while Yugi is mainly with his wizard character. When Takahashi gets to have fun and let loose, that's when the duels get interesting and evoke what he envisioned Yu-Gi-Oh! To be. Jiraigumo is both a trap and monster card. Yugi swiftly 2-for-1s using Mystic Box and attacks Labyrinth Tank. Exclusively to the show, they use Invigoration and Monster Tamer to boost Dungeon Worm, which Joey immediately counters by exiting the magical hats and using the other destroyed magical hats, using Salamander equipped to use for an alignment advantage against Dungeon Worm. However, this is just as easily countered by Suijin's water attribute over fire attributes, the rival Gate Guardian. Not even Yugi's Mirror Force bails him out of this one. As much as fans of the show may not like it, the Gate Guardians do in fact have quick effects, and the dreaded once per turn clauses. So yes, the Paradox Brothers do play on their opponent's turn, and I'm all here for that. With the help of the now damned Labyrinth and Spellbinding Circle stopping Kazejin, Suijin is now defeated. Piece by piece, the Gate Guardian is falling. Once again, Red Eyes doesn't save Joey out of this one. Even combining the Black Skull Dragon is enough. There's a lot that goes on in this duel, but from the Paradox Brothers' perspective as the third player killers, these guys are a threat with the idea of a tag duel and how well they play off each other. Gate Guardian is a legitimate boss monster, and Ryuryoku is a solid win condition. And yes, they can attack those when they play a magic card. Otherwise, Joey and Yugi would have lost. Shame the Gate Guardian with 3 different monsters stacked together and not the full entity with huge stats like it is in the card game. But we finally have our very first A tier. It would be a shame if every tag duel in the series was underwhelming and boring. I can't believe I'm about to say this. It's what you've all been waiting for. The world champion, the character with the clean, undefeated record, the only one to defeat Yugi and claim their title as King of Games. One may even say, Queen of Games. The character with the constant growing battle aura, ready to unleash their true power level, the real villain of Yugioh. Taya is the one who calls the shots, overpowers every other character in the series. She is the pack leader of the group. She is the alpha female of the group. She won't let anyone challenge her reign as Queen of Games. Everyone knows that Yami Taya is the strongest character in all of Yu-Gi-Oh!, even being an icon on TikTok. The only character to defeat a story arc villain, committing a 187, revealing that she is the wielder of the Millennium Rod. There's a reason she's so cool in the opening. It's because she's not just cool, she's ice cold. Why do you think so many cards that are expensive look like her? Everyone loves Taya. Even Japanese women want to be Taya. Takahashi knew he wanted to design her. She's the reason so many female monsters are expensive. They want a Taya for their own. Taya is a plague buster armed with her mighty dual disc. Taya can win any 1v1 outside of her own universe. She even has a job to afford all her indulgences. Taya is a conqueror, but she sees, she kills. She's malicious. And that's why you should subscribe to all my favorite Yugi-tuber channels, like TGS Yugioh, Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime 101, and Watch Mojo YGO. Now that my common sense is back, Taya never duels in canon. She does duel in the second and third timeline, with this being her only duel in the second timeline, exclusive to the cartoon. This hand of hers is pretty much her whole deck. Weak light fairy monsters, and I forgot to mention she has Fairy's Gift and Dispel. People will joke Taya for not knowing what Waboku does, but to be fair, the average-sized mother didn't know what Waboku did on the playground either. It's because its wording is not intuitive to how the game functions. I'm not going to sugarcoat things. This is a solid C-tier deck, like worse than Panic C-tier. Outside of the funny joke of Yugi tubers referencing that Taya wins against Joey every day at study hall isn't going to help her out. She forgets how flip effects work, and her highest attack output is 2,000 attack. Now we can talk about someone just as bad as Taya. If I spent time mocking Taya fanboys, it's time to ridicule Kaiba fangirls, because there's a lot to unpack. The man, the myth, the legend, and sometimes poorly animated. Yu-Gi-Oh! Fangirls are really committed to this character, which is very strange considering that in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Canon, he is the villain of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. Kaiba is also cartoonishly evil and cartoonishly weird, like almost as if that was on purpose, like he was a joke, because he is. Kaiba is conceptually a joke from his character design, being based around a rude person in Takahashi's life, conceptualized into Seto Kaiba. He is quite literally a self-insert. Not only that, Kaiba is the jobber of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. It's almost comical how badly they find new ways for Kaiba to lose. Kaiba even begins the series in a coma. Hey, a maid who looks like Taya. Maybe TGS Yu-Gi-Oh!, Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and Watch Mojo YGO were onto something. Kaiba is a menace in all the wrong ways. All of his duels are rigged and fixed from the start, and the worst part is he still loses all 3 of his on-screen duels. This isn't a Mandela effect or anything. This is Kaiba just being really bad at the game. I've neglected to talk about the iconic first duel of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it's aged poorly. Yugi spends the whole duel turtling in defense mode until he draws either Gaia, Dark Magician, or Exodia, even twirling with swords revealing light. He also forgets what Sangan does, which is the best creature in his deck. Yes, the very first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is iconic, but don't get me started on Yugi vs. Kaiba when they introduced the dual disc. I'm not even going to attempt to explain how dirty he did Joey or even Yugi, so I'm just going to explain the rules of the dual disc on screen real quick. The sad part is Kaiba is fundamentally the most narratively important character in the story, which is made even more funnier when he loses all the time. Now this is a random side tangent, but this is truly traumatic and scary stuff. I'm surprised they didn't remove this in the 4Kid stuff. Where do I begin with how poor and overhyped this duel was? Kaiba is trying to turtle until he has 4 specific cards in his 5-card hand. He spends the whole duel trash talking. and this duel takes forever to start, which is a shame because of how overhyped this duel was on Kids WB.
A disappearing deck. No, my cards! Leads to the most powerful card ever created.
That monster's attack points are off the charts!
The Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon! Let's finish this, Kaiba! Don't miss the all-new Yu-Gi-Oh! Trilogy, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, this Saturday at 11:10 Central and Pacific on Kids WB.
Kaiba spends the whole duel getting outplayed by Yugi every step of the way. Kaiba's Crush Card Virus is the equivalent of Yugi's Horn of the Unicorn or Joey's Time Wizard. It's iconic, but it doesn't do anything at all in the game. All Kaiba does is just trash talk, and he still loses to Yugi, even though Yugi gives him a mercy win. If only Kaiba could match energies with someone who would trash talk and actually traumatize him. Someone almost as good as him.
Welcome to Toon World!
It's Kaiba versus Pegasus in a duel gone mad.
How's anybody supposed to win against that kind of power?
Meet the new and improved Blue Eyes Toon Dragon!
It's a trap!
And all new Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yu-Gi-Oh! Has their own equivalent to the Creator vs. Champion, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Equivalent to Garfield vs. Finkel, 2 years before the actual set came out. Just like the real-world equivalent, Garfield vs. Finkel, it was just as one-sided and humiliating. Even before the duel begins, he refuses to play a rigged duel using the duel disc unlike Yugi and even calls Kaiba out on it. The true humiliation begins when Kaiba attempts to crash Blue Eyes into Toon Blue Eyes, only to fail. This is where Kaiba's main strength comes from. Outside of Blue Eyes Turbo, Kaiba has a strong collection of trap cards, with Shadow Spell being crucial to defeating Toon Blue Eyes. Crush Card, Negate Attack, and Shadow Spell, and later Stop Defense are all his best cards to help him pivot a duel in his favor. With the exception of Crush Card, since that card has a worse track record than Time Wizard. Kaiba is the first duelist to have more than one duel on screen. Unfortunately, he loses all of them, and they are all kind of bad. Does Kaiba actually have any good duels? Technically, yes. And Kaiba fangirls, you won't like this one. The best duel involving Kaiba is the one where Kaiba isn't even featured in a duel. Kaiba could never live up to Player Killer #1, or Ghost Kaiba in the show, or Ventriloquist in the comic, which is where the funny Laundry Maid panel comes from. I'd call him a creature, but that's a Magic the Gathering reference. I'd call him a Pokemon, but he doesn't look like a tiny turtle. Instead of stalling to play Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, Ghost Kaiba slams down Blue Eyes as early as turn 2, even using Stop Defense as a continuous trap so Yugi's forced to use his weaker monsters to attack. Even when he used Magical Hats and relies on luck and Spellbinding Circle, Ghost Kaiba plays another Blue Eyes, so much so that Yugi admits defeat and just plays Feral Imp in attack mode and awaits losing to the second Blue Eyes, where sadly Ghost Kaiba gets cheated hard by Deus Ex Machina by Takahashi, only for him to slam down the third Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes Turbo wins again. Ghost Kaiba even uses his Negate Attack offensive to negate Near Force and protect his Blue Eyes, knowing that this deck is a Defend the Castle deck trying to Turbo Blue Eyes and sit on it. As lame as it is, seeing Yugi use his Priest to boost the Blue Eyes Red Dragon summoned by Monster Born is pretty cool. The only way to defeat Blue Eyes is to use another Blue Eyes. As lame as Kaiba is in having an X3 record, I'm going to put him in S tier, being heavily carried by Ghost Kaiba. Also, unlike Kaiba, this is the only duel where Soggy doesn't make an appearance. Even Ghost Kaiba knew not to play bad cards. The bottom of S tier is still S tier. It would be embarrassing if Kaiba only got worse as the series continued. Finally, we get to talk about someone who only has good duels. It's about time we talk about a good female character. It's no secret Mai is my second favorite character in vanilla Yu-Gi-Oh! This is also a character who can back up their status as a pro as well. Mai narratively brings up an interesting point of Duelist Kingdom, and that's the notion that so many of these players are really bad at the game, and that's before Kaiba shows up. Mai is emblematic of how most competitive players are. The tournament doesn't fully begin until all the weaker players are thinned out. Mai vs. Joey is the introduction to a lot of things, the alignment matchups as well as the mountains. Not only that, much like her off-screen duel with Rex, she stacks her deck and cheats to scare her opponents. If you ever played Fire Emblem Langrisser or common simulation games at the time, you know the terror of fighting a flying enemy. Aside from the alignment matchup, Joey fails the object permanence test twice in a row, attacking with a weaker monster and then attacking into a disadvantageous matchup. This is where Joey turtles are drawn out for Mai, only for her to play equip after equip for stacking her deck. With Cyber 2 and Electro Whip, in addition to the field power bonus and type matchup, Mai is a heavy hitter and knows beatdown and clips with a meta. Instead of attacking Baby Dragon, Mai BMs Joey and plays Elegant Egotist to triple Harpy Ladies, where Joey fuses his Time Wizard and Baby Dragon into Thousand Dragon, resulting in Mai's monsters that age and lose the ability to fly, where Joey uses the new rules against her. A lot of people get confused how Joey won when he uses a flying monster to attack her 3 land monsters. Even then, Mai also loses because she stacked her deck and no longer has a monster to play. Joey beats her in more ways than one, all because she played greedy. Harpy Ladies are without a doubt a fan favorite, but we're not even done. We haven't gotten to the real iconic duel yet, Mai vs. Yugi. Granted, she still is hinted at to stack her deck. Mai slams down her Harpy Lady and sets the trap that fixes her deck's one fatal flaw. Mirror Wall. Reducing the attack of all attacking monsters by half makes it so her Harpy Ladies can attack over anything that's less than 2600 attack. Yugi also fails the object permanence test for the 4th time, ignoring her continuous trap card and attacking with Summoned Skull, the strongest monster in Yugi's deck. When attempting to use Spellbinding Circle, Mai counters with Harpy's Feather Duster, then later counters his Mirror Force with her second Harpy's Feather Duster. Followed by playing Shadow of Eye, Mai is tired of Yugi's turtling, where she's trying to push for lethal. This is where Mai gambles on a 50-50 to attack Yugi or to not attack Yugi for lethal, where Yugi's bluff saves him another turn.
A lot more of the footsies out of him, it's not quite as trap and setup based.
And yeah, he still has those explosive mix-ups from the Demon Flip as well.
Look at that read, I mean that was as unsafe as could be. If she had woken up with Ultra or really anything, that was it, but he had called out that backdash.
Yugi correctly calls that Mai wouldn't attack and second guesses herself with his bluff face down, resulting in Yugi to top deck the now famous Sword Revealing Light to stall and turtle for more time. Peak Yugi gameplay. Within these turns, Yugi draws Monster Reborn to summon Gaia, summons Kriebel, and lastly draws the Blackluster Soldier to ritual summon Blackluster Soldier. With Gaia as the necessary material, we get to our first introduction of Chaos in Yu-Gi-Oh!
Opening the gates of Chaos, Blackluster Soldier!
Chaos being a pivotal tone change for Yu-Gi-Oh! In real life and in the series, something that was hinted at very early since episode 2. Speaking of callbacks, Mai reinforces how much one turn can make a crucial difference in a duel, something TCG players can relate to with the time rules. Even if she was written to be a jobber and lose to Joey and Yugi, if she didn't show mercy both times, she really would be Queen of Games. Mr. Howard. Yeah, I'm not calling him that. I also can't call him Bandit because that name belongs to someone else. Joey's in a serious mismatch. Keith only has one duel and this man defends his title as North American Champion, being a proper debut to Machine monsters. Machines have so many perks and benefits that they are without a doubt the best monster type thus far. In the TCG, Metal Raiders made Black Skull Dragon the cover art card, while in Japan they made Barrel Dragon both the watermark and cover art card, the chapter being named after Keith and the card later being named after the chapter as well. This is Joey's main event. Much like Ghost Kaiba, Keith is set on the beatdown strategy, playing boss monster after boss monster, with the infamous stop defense being a crucial card in so many duels. As Keith is about to attack for lethal, Joey does the unthinkable and plays the trap card in his very first 1v1 game. Not one, but two consecutively, going card for card with Keith. Keith summons Barrel Dragon and uses his ability to attack all of Joey's monsters. Joey attempts to use Time Wizard and Baby Dragon to turn the duel around. It fails him when Keith has a backup plan in the form of Time Machine. For the first and sadly last time, Red Eye's Black Dragon is going to help Joey win a game. With help from Copycat, Joey beats over Barrel Dragon. As Keith sets up his slot machine to attack over Red Eye's Metal Dragon by cheating, Joey pumps up his Red Eyes with Dragon Nails to overpower Blasphemy. As Keith uses the Pillager card to steal a card from Joey's hand and attack over Red Eyes, Joey uses his third trap card Grave Robber to use Time Machine and attack over Slot Machine and deal exactly equal damage. Keith without a doubt backs up his title as North American Champion. High stats, beatdown, equip cards, and all the perks of using machine monsters. This is the man to beat, the top of S tier easily. For those who don't know, we'll be talking about Keith much later. Look at him. In the finals of Duelist Kingdom, if Kaiba is the most important character narratively, Joey is the most important character symbolically. I'm not going to spend too much time on the story, the feels, the animation, the characters, otherwise I turn into one of those Yugi-tubers. Or turn into my favorite Yugi-tuber, Watch Mojo Yugioh. For as much as people meme on Joey for using luck, this is a gross Mandela effect, because he's not even the one who relies on luck in this story arc. Unlike Yugi, Joey seeks out tutelage from the real king of games, Grandpa. They do mention that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the most complicated card game, which it is. Joey is emblematic of starting a hobby and wanting to grow with it and get better at it. I'm not even going to humor the off-screen games with Yugi and Taya. Duelist Kingdom starts with Joey training to improve his deck, with new insight from Yugi and Grandpa, and receives his very first spellcaster, Time Wizard. Joey's story arc is simple. Learn to be there for yourself. When things get bad, you're going to have to learn to stand up for yourself. Joey will often voice that he doesn't understand the Duelist Kingdom rules and wants to play fair and proper, taking a very long time to get used to the field power bonus rule. With his very first victory, he uses Time Wizard as fusion material to OTK Mai with 1000 Dragon, which again doesn't require luck, it's a passive effect when used as fusion material. One of his best moments is his duel with Rex, where when Joey hears of the ante, all he's thinking about is how expensive Red Eyes is. He takes the gamble and gets rewarded. This is the only time luck plays a factor in his victories. As mentioned before, this is the last time Time Wizard helps Joey in a duel. Both Time Wizard and Red Eyes failed to win against Bonz, with Shield and Sword saving him as the first magic card Joey ever plays. Joey uses deductive thinking to find out which gate is the correct path. Likewise in the tag duel, he gets to show how much he's improved with the first trap card he ever plays, a good callback to the second episode as well.
Kunai with chain! What is this? My trap card worked! Reel him in, Axe Raider!
In tandem with cards like Copycat, Joey learns fast and uses his opponent's strength often to his advantage, but I wouldn't be doing Joey justice if I didn't talk about his best duel, his duel against Keith, where not only once or twice, but 3 times to do his trap cards turn the game around for him, as well as Red Eyes' time to shine as his true ace monster.
And throw the Red Eyes Black Dragon in attack mode!
All good things must come to an end. Unfortunately, we get to talk about a very lackluster finale to Joey's arc. I'm sorry to all the fans of Watch Mojo YGO. The Yugi and Joey duel is very weak in comparison, when both Joey and Yugi have already had their best duels respectively. Spoilers, by the way. Joey legitimately keeps up with Yugi, and even despite Joey not having a grandpa that owns a LGS and rare cards, even summoning Black Skull Dragon, the duel takes a massive drop when Yugi starts to turtle, stalling for time and relies on luck with magical hats. But sure, Joey is the one who relies on luck. As a minor spoiler, a lot of what I say about Joey secretly applies to Yugi. To quote many people who review Duelist Kingdom, how did Yugi ever win any duels with this deck? Wizards and Warriors, Gaia and Dark Magician Turbo. Fitting since that's how Yugioh started out in the OCG. To iterate from the very beginning, Joey is the NPC or wild enemy encounter in the series. For every Rock Ogre, Armored Lizard, Koji Koki, or Battle Warrior, there's a Giltia, Axe Raider, Gruzy's Flame Swordsman, and Thousand Dragon. It takes a while for Joey's potential to shine, and even gets some strong clips along the way. One thing I haven't mentioned is Joey is just built different. Every one of his duels, he's the underdog and someone cheats. Even Rex and Bonz cheat by having someone coach them or spoil Joey's draft. Joey is the fastest improving duelist in the series, and while he's not bringing out a B tier for this story arc, he does get vastly better in the next one. Protagonist time! Do you lack object permanence? Do you forget how to do math? Do you rely on plot armor? Do you rely on turtling to draw an out? Do you rely on Mirror Force and Spellbinding Circle? Do you rely on luck with magical hats multiple times? Do you rely on Dark Magician? Do you lack object permanence? Everything I've said about Joey heavily applies to Yugi. Outside of main character plot armor and literal Deus Ex Machina, Yugi's on par with Joey. I more or less went in depth with all of Yugi's duels, so this won't be that one. I'm not even going to humor the unsatisfying duels with Kaiba and Pegasus in the first 2 episodes, since those are just Yugi turtling for time. Being one of the 2 main characters, Yugi is the everyman vehicle for the audience, so yes, he is forced to forget how the game is played, and for him to be smart at times when he has no idea what's going on. So now we can talk about Yugi perspective. For the 3rd time, Horn of the Unicorn does nothing and backfires on Yugi. Pegasus toys with Yugi and uses his own trap cards against him. Just like Kaiba, he even uses his tunes to avoid attacks. With Gorgon's Eye, Yugi's once again forced to go on the offense and can't turtle anymore, so instead he stalls for time and relies on luck using magical hats, which honestly shouldn't. Even after removing magical hats, Yugi technically doesn't play 2 cards, he just bounces back 1 effect and only uses Mirror Force, which is a clever way to defeat Toon World, which leads to the real good part of the duel, the real final boss of the story arc. I can't stress that of all the boss monsters in Vanilla Yu-Gi-Oh!, the Ritual monster is the most menacing and accurate to what it does. While it may not seem obvious at first, if you're looking for a boss monster that tore competitive, real-life Yu-Gi-Oh!, these 2 did the job. It's unbelievable Yugi even won this. In an attempt to not lose to delayed bird damage, Mystic Box and Ritual Summoning Magician of Black Chaos turn the tide for Yugi, only for Blingish to reach its ultimate form with Thousand Eyes Restrict. Once again doing it proper justice, using Multiplying Karibo to block its ability and self-destruct on contact to blind Thousand Eyes. Pegasus was done dirty. He was robbed. It's clear Yugi isn't the dueling expert in the family. This deck was good for episode 1, but after that this deck is severely lacking in power. Without a doubt the best duel is the tag duel with Joey. Yugi using creativity and strategy to overwhelm the Labyrinth Brothers is enjoying to watch. Plus it gives Joey time to shine. Yes, Yugi once again relies on luck with magical hats, but Joey bails him out, and we get to see the iconic comic panel. Yugi goes on top of B tier, being heavily carried by Dark Magician and Mirror Force. Now we can talk about the real MVP of the story arc. Maximilian Pegasus, a true man of culture. Pegasus truly is a blessed man, because no one on the island stands a chance against him. Pegasus is the one person to play what are essentially side deck cards in his main deck, and he gets rewarded. Pegasus also has no patience for anyone. He's campy when he needs to be, but absolutely unhinged when needed. He doesn't even need to cheat or read anyone's mind when everyone is so easy to read. I forgot to mention this in the Kaiba duel because all of Kaiba's duels are boring, but Kaiba's deck low-key has no muscle. It's strictly Blue Eyes Turbo. Swordstalker and Judgment are his only cards that have more than 2,000 attack besides Blue Eyes. But you gotta include Soggy and Crush card. Those cards never fail. As funny as it is, Yugi's monster lineup is way better than Kaiba's. Even Joey gets a stacked group of monsters and also has a good equipped card lineup when needed. I'm very glad Ghost Kaiba carries Kaiba's reputation. After being put on tilt after getting his Blue Eyes stolen, Kaiba pulls his second Blue Eyes out of pure luck, only for it to not matter since Toon World is indestructible and so is Toon Blue Eyes. For as much as Yugi warned Kaiba of Dragon Capture Jar, Kaiba falls victim to it, and also falls victim to his own Crush Card virus too. With Kaiba having no monsters left in his deck to play, he uses Monster Reborn fittingly on a clown. Kaiba loses on technicality of not being able to play a monster, an achievement previously held on to by Mai twice. It would be embarrassing if Kaiba doesn't get to do anything in the next story arc and has an unusable boss monster as well. Pegasus is ready to duel anyone in the finals, and ready to turn their boss monster against them using Toon World. Now to recap the Yugi duel, Pegasus has a trap card for nearly every occasion, including Yugi's boring turtling strategy. Doppelganger can be any card he wants, even having a magic card for Yugi's Swords Revealing Light and Magical Hats. I once again can't stress how good this deck is, both from the Toons and eventual Relinquish and Thousand Eyes Restrict. I'm beginning to understand why Pegasus is such a fan favorite, and Toons are one of the most popular archetypes from fans of the show. Toons have a cool design very reminiscent of Magic the Gathering and even Duel Masters, fitting with Yu-Gi-Oh's early Magic the Gathering clone inspiration. Inspiring the iconic cute archetype that turns scary, Pegasus is the strongest and best villain in the series and is secretly the mastermind behind everything, even manipulating Kaiba into thinking he's a world champion just to lure Yugi to Duelist Kingdom and take over Kaiba Corp. A double S-tier character for sure. Well, that's our tier list. All 22 characters ranked. But that's not what you want me to say. There's 8 other characters that a lot of people want me to talk about, some that will barely get any attention and some that are worth talking about. Now, let's get to talking about some real duelists. Alright, let's get 3 out of the way immediately. For whatever reason, a lot of people think Ghost, Kaiba, Ventriloquist, and Yami Yugi are all different characters, when simply put, they aren't, so we're already up to 17 now. The Yu-Gi-Oh fandom also thinks Tristan is a duelist too. Even if he was, he never duels. Tristan owning cards is exclusive to the 2nd and 3rd Yu-Gi-Oh timeline, where even then, he's just an amateur. So that's 18 of our 22. Now we can talk about a real threat. You can tell this is a good duel because it's 1 episode long and short. Bakura plays hand control, which was very good for its time. With how weak monsters were back then, the fandom likes to say that he plays a milling strategy when he plays not 1 but 2 morphing jars to draw a new hand instead of a new trap card to change the game state. Nearly all of his monsters are flip effects, and he can draw burn cards or change of heart to attack or lethal with how weak a lot of Yugi's cards are. As we later see, this is absolutely a burn deck when we get to see Chain Energy later. Bakura is someone who knows to bring effect monsters into their deck. Bakura is someone who can back up his threats. He could easily beat anyone without even trying. But Yugi has to plot armor himself from not losing to Change of Heart. Bakura is nothing short of an easy S tier. I forgot that he does play Lady of Faith. People told me that he plays Sangan, which isn't true. He plays Sangan in a later story arc, and Yugi does play it and forget that it has a floating effect. Luckily there is a duelist that comes up who does play Sangan and remember it has a floating effect. Technically, Duke never duels in canon. He has what is essentially a sneak peek with Joey. If Duke introduces anything, it's that Joey has some pocket change for his hobbies, which is a thing in Japan. Most families give their children allowances for Sunday or for the week. Maybe the fandom was right about Joey being lucky, because Joey's pulls are crack in this set. For the uninitiated, they are opening a mix of the side set Thousand Die Bible and the core booster set Curse of Anubis. When combined, it is the OCG equivalent to what we know as Pharaoh's Servant. For the older TCG players, this was an amazing set with so many cards still seeing play in Speed Duels and Go format. It's no exaggeration that Joey gets the best improvement out of anyone for the next story arc. This may be spoilers for Battle City, but it really shouldn't. As a brief history lesson, if you ever wondered why TCG players never got Joey's cards, it's because a lot of these cards were locked behind OCG structure decks. While the TCG got starter decks akin to Magic the Gathering and Pokemon, the OCG only got structure decks featuring good cards. If these cards look familiar, it's because we did get them, as 2005 Tins Cyber Dragon, making none of these cards GOAT format legal, barely missing the original era. Joey's cards were featured in the 2004 Tins, with my favorite card Command Knight being a featured card. As a matter of fact, 3 of these cards would later be in the Warrior structure deck to help newer players or those who didn't want to invest a lot into Yu-Gi-Oh, helping players perform well at Hobby League during the Other Deck era. Funny that Joey's toolbox of Warriors and Trap cards would later be the model design of what we now know as Warrior Toolbox, or simply Toolbox for Jack-of-all-trade decks that defined an era as the main thing to rival Chaos. Warriors aging perfectly helps too, which we'll later see. Warrior combo decks are both budget and have never been power crept out of the game. Even today, it's a shame Joey didn't get a chance to play structure deck cards like Marauding Captain or Command Knight in the show, but got to in Duelix and Speed Duel. Before Yokai Watch or Battle Network, and just like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 4 was an interesting what-if scenario where Joey was the main character and his Egyptian god card was the Winged Dragon of Ra. For context, this game was released when the top 8 of Battle City was starting in the comic, so no one knew what would happen. Could you imagine Joey getting the Egyptian god card and turning evil? Now that would be interesting. Hopefully don't ruin a duel between Joey and Yugi 3 different times. What about Mai? Her opponent was Marik. What if she won the Egyptian god card and turned evil? Considering the connection between Joey and Mai, could you imagine an evil Mai versus Joey with high stakes? Would be embarrassing if they ruined this twice. Also, this is where the meme comes from. A joke in Jump Comics. Speaking of competent female characters, once again a short duel. that means it's a good one. It's crazy to see someone have so much gas in their deck and have it stacked with good effect monsters. It feels unnatural. Good job, Team Tokyo. Featuring floating effects and cards like Millennium Shield to do major damage when attack into was kinda crazy when the starting line was 20. I also get to talk about how crazy of a card Judgment Blaster is. Also, the screen time of Cannon Soldier is an unwelcome surprise considering what the card is known for today. With floaters, a solid finisher, and Cannon Soldier to tribute for floaters is a genius game plan. This is an absolute nuisance of a deck. Kinda wish he didn't play Sangan and Witch the Black Forest in attack mode to toy with Yugi, when if he summoned a big attack monster, the duel was going to be over fast. I'm also counting her grandfather too for a total of 21 characters. I did mention I'd come back to talk about Keith. Since exclusive to Timeline 2, he does have another duel, and he's way stronger than before. I also don't want to talk about Mechanical Chaser's history in the TCG. I also did mention in the video that beatdown has been a very core strategy for early Yu-Gi-Oh! From what others have messaged me is that they consider this Marik's debut more than Keith's duel, so it really depends since I forgot about that detail. So you can say there are 22 or 23 duels in the list. If you consider this Keith's duel, then Keith jumps up to a double S tier. If you don't, then Marik would be a double S tier character instead. A nice hint at what's to come. Would be embarrassing if Marik fell hard from grace after starting as a double S tier character. But if Marik was a last minute inclusion, then who is the best duelist in the supposed 22nd duelist? Sadly, this player never gets to play the game in canon. In fact, the English dub says that they dueled to censor what really happened, so I'll humor them. What if this character was a duelist? They've been hinted at as the real champion and expert gamer, truly iconic to the series and the original Yami character who played Shadow games. It was his deck after all.
Another leg. One more piece. The crowd is chanting, one more piece. This is a historical moment here in Indianapolis. This is clean. This is very clean. We got the other arm. And all 5 pieces have been assembled. The legs, the arms, the head. Exodia obliterate.
Unbelievable.
Wow, the crowd goes.
Originally abducted and mugged for his Blue Eyes card, in the 4Kids dub, Grandpa and Kaiba had a duel, which is very untrue to what would have happened. Solomon and Simone were the original user of the Millennium Puzzle and Exodia, and does have a body count and gave people a Fantasy Gamer a mind crush. Grandpa would have taught Kaiba manners the hard way and still mind crushed them too. Even at his old age, Grandpa still has it. Grandpa would have never lost to anyone and can easily defeat Pegasus and Kaiba, which is why Pegasus trapped his soul. It's even in his bloodline to wield Exodia. For as much as everyone turtles and stalls, there's only one deck that benefits from turtling and stalling. Hey, if you guys made it to the end of this, I just want to say thank you. This part's really unscripted, so I'm probably going to mess up a lot. This took a lot longer than expected because I really don't like Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm more of a fan of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, Duel Links, Master Duel, Speed Duel, anything like Yu-Gi-Oh! Related. I'll even play the video games, but it's just the comic and the anime are just kind of hard to really sit down and watch. It's just a thing you kind of consume. It's not a real thing. For my first video, I do want to talk more about the actual TCG and actual real-life people in the game. I want to talk about more things that are kind of not well documented on YouTube, or things that are just kind of handled, poorly, like things that aren't really, like, I guess, kind of well documented on YouTube. As a little hint, I always do subtly hint my next video topic, so if you guys could figure it out, I will both do the follow-up for this video, and I will also go into my next more serious video. Thank you for watching, and just have a good day, my friends.